Captain Marvel, directed and co-written by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, introduces our newest hero into the MCU, Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, whose name is Veers, lives on the Kree planet Hala, but doesn't remember anything about her past. She's part of an elite Kree team that's attempting to destroy the Skrulls, an evil race of aliens that shapeshift and infiltrate planets around the galaxy. However, little does Veers know that she actually had a life back on Earth where her name was Carol Danvers. As she attempts to complete her mission of destroying the Skrulls, she also attempts to uncover the truth of her past. Alright, so Captain Marvel has a lot of hype and also a lot of controversy surrounding it right now. I always do my best to try and keep these reviews as free from politics and other outside influences as I possibly can. You guys are here to listen to what I have to say about the movie, not the politics of it, my own politics, or anything else for that matter. And I think part of this whole controversy is sort of a battle between differing ideologies. For me, I'm not looking for anything political or any sort of social agenda out of a film like this. I want a good movie with good characters and a good story and some fun action, and that's honestly it. Leading up to the film, many were worried about being beaten over the head with some sort of agenda. Now, of course, the other elephant in the room is Brie Larson and her various comments leading up to the film. I tried to stay as far away from that as I possibly could. I really just wanted to focus on the movie and then focus on judging the movie on its own merit. Well, no matter where I went online, I saw arguments and debates, and it became too much to ignore. Full transparency, I'm not going to go super deeply into what she said or meant or whatever else, but listening to all of it left me feeling a little bit sour, I'll say that. It left me with a bad taste in my mouth going into the theater. But I still try to remain excited and optimistic nonetheless. Here's what I'll say. I don't think Captain Marvel is a bad movie. I don't think it's the best Marvel movie to date by any stretch, or probably even in the top 10, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. It has some issues, which we'll touch on, but I was satisfied when I left the theater overall. Let's start with Brie Larson though, because this is what I think everyone will probably want to hear about the most. I think she's good in this role. I'm not sure she was the perfect casting, because there are moments where I feel like she's not as great with being witty and snappy, like pretty much every Marvel hero is expected to be in some facet. As you've probably heard, this is very much a fish out of water story. Carol lands on Earth and she has no memory of being there, and she just stands out in basically every way. I think there are moments where Brie Larson does shine in the role. There's also moments where I found her to be a tad flat, which can be a big problem for a Marvel hero that's supposed to not only carry their own franchise, but also elevate team-up films like Endgame, which is right around the corner. I think one of the questions many people are going to ask themselves is, can you see anyone else in this role? For me, the answer is probably yes, but I don't think it's an entirely fair question right now because she's only had one movie to sort of prove herself and establish her footing. I mean, I think we still need to give her a little bit more time in this role. So, long story short, is she going to blow you away? No, she's not. But I do believe she does a good job playing a character that has some strong moments throughout the film. There are some weaknesses in her performance, but overall, I felt okay with it. Let's also talk about Samuel L. Jackson. So first off, let me say that the de-aging effects Marvel are currently pulling off are remarkable. Everything to do with his face is awesomely done, and I never once felt that I was, taken out of the movie with how he looked. It looks very, very genuine, let me just say that. There are some issues with his movement where he looks to be moving way too slow to be like a 30 or 40-year-old, but that's a fairly minor complaint overall. I think one of the better parts of the movie is the team up and the interactions between Fury and Carol. There's humor that works here, mostly from Sam Jackson, and I just found the interactions between the two to be an enjoyable aspect of this movie. This is a very, very different Nick Fury than we're used to, and I guess that could be partially explained to, working at S.H.I.E.L.D. for years and years and the stress of doing so. I'm not really sure because this Fury is much more of a jokester and isn't nearly as serious, which was fun for this movie, but not all that consistent in the overall, grand scheme of the MCU. So consistency is a bit of an issue here. But I think just taking the buddy cop aspect at face value, I liked it. Goose the Cat was also pretty cool, which you've probably heard a lot about already. Not a complete showstopper, but he's a fun addition as well. There are some retcons that happen in this movie, though, and I wasn't overly fond of those. There's explanations that this Captain Marvel movie delivers about important aspects of the MCU, or even specific characters, and I wasn't a fan of those explanations. They felt forced, even a little underwhelming in all honesty, and I think there's an effort here to sort of force Captain Marvel into the MCU at a time when it's pretty difficult to do so. With Endgame right around the corner in a universe like 11 years in the making at this point, and a universe that's about to wrap up and sort of reboot itself, it just feels like a really tough time to throw in this ultra powerful character into the mix that's going to change the course of the entire franchise. I think Captain Marvel does its best as a film to try and find its place in the MCU, but his place ends up being forced into the front of the stage when it just doesn't feel like it's quite the right time to do that. By the end of this film, she becomes incredibly powerful, and I'll probably end up going on a little bit of a rant about this, so I do apologize in advance, but I do feel like Marvel took things a little bit too far here. I think for me, while the action was exciting to watch, the last 20 minutes feel fairly weightless. A lot of the tension is removed because of how powerful Captain Marvel becomes, and how quickly she does it. You never feel like she's in any real danger because she's just so insanely powerful that her enemies are fairly inconsequential in comparison. Here's what I'll say. The MCU cannot have a Superman. Captain Marvel can't come in and throw off the entire balance of the universe, with a skill set that just makes everyone else inferior in every way. It breaks the universe. Because in Justice League, Superman shows up and the rest of the team becomes fairly useless. I'm a bit worried that Marvel has made Captain Marvel so OP that all the attention, can be removed from whatever battle she's in. She's definitely, she cannot come in and just take out Thanos because that would be brutally underwhelming and it would feel very unearned. I mean, it's all hypothetical at this point, but I do think Marvel needs to tone down her powers a bit to balance things out. Because right now, she's pretty damn OP, and there's no tension in any fight she's in with those powers. Let's talk about the action itself, though. So I really loved how this movie looks, and I think the CG looks great. The Kree homeworld looks vibrant and advanced, Captain Marvel's abilities are all glowy and cool, it all looks solid and pretty good. I did have a problem with some of the editing of the action scenes because they do feel a bit choppy. I mean, at times it's pretty difficult to figure out what's going on. This only happens occasionally, and more often than not, I found myself really enthralled by the action scenes that do feel exciting and fun. They aren't quite as big as I would have liked, but I still enjoyed the spectacle for what it was. Another aspect I want to discuss is the villain. Ben Mendelsohn is absolutely awesome as the Skrull leader Telios. He plays a really dynamic villain that's fleshed out in a sympathetic way. There's a reason for him doing the things he does. There's a reason he believes the things he does. He's similar to Killmonger or Thanos or Vulture, the more recent MCU villains in that way that have been made sympathetic in some fashion. I think a lot of people will say that Ben Mendelsohn stole the show here, and he kind of did. I mean, his character was one that I found myself always wanting more of because his skill set and personal story were so interesting. Now, some will say the fact that many don't feel this way about Captain Marvel herself is telling, and it probably is, to be honest. I think there could have been more done with her character for sure, and what we end up with is, in my opinion, a satisfying character, but one that is undeniably a bit rushed and pretty underdeveloped. I think if this is the character they're going to bank on to lead the MCU, then they're going to need to flesh her out a bit more effectively moving forward. So ultimately, I think Captain Marvel was a good movie. It's not as bad as some people say, and it's not as good as some people say. I think that while its importance is a big aspect of why some really want it to succeed, I think it's also important to remember that there's a large crowd out there that just wants to watch a good movie. It can at times be difficult to separate the art from the artist, and in this case, what Brie Larson has said, has created a lot of outrage about her and the movie. It is a shame though, because I like this movie and I think it's probably somewhere around like the Doctor Strange quality for me. I think there are things to like, and there's also some flaws that are really noticeable. Regardless, I've always been in the group that I just want to see a good movie. I try to avoid all the chatter from the outside and focus my efforts on judging the movie on its own merit. This one was difficult though because of how much controversy is still surrounding it. Still, I do recommend you guys give it a watch to make up your own mind. It's important to figure out what you think about the movie and not give in to what everyone else is saying. Let's take a look at the pros cons as we wrap up. For the pros, I think Captain Marvel delivers some strong characters, great visuals and CG, good performances, and a very strong villain. As for the cons, I think Captain Marvel herself isn't always as dynamic as she should be. She becomes way overpowered in a matter of minutes, and the emotion isn't always there with this one. It doesn't quite make you connect with Captain Marvel herself as much as it probably should have. I'm still going to give Captain Marvel an 8.5 out of 10 and recommend you check it out because in my opinion it is a solid addition to the MCU despite its problems. It's not one of the best, but it's a solid film overall. Make sure to let me know what you guys thought of Captain Marvel if you have seen it, and if you haven't, then let me know why you don't want to see it. It really does suck that we sometimes just can't enjoy a movie as a piece of entertainment nowadays. It's frustrating for those of us that have invested a lot of time and money into these franchises. But hey, here's to hoping everything settles down here shortly. Either way, this is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next video.